Welcome to the Inside Slant Podcast, brought to you by Jayhawkslant.com. Here's the staff from Jayhawks Slant, the online leader in KU coverage since 1999.
Hey everybody, this is Randy Withers. Welcome into another pregame edition of the Inside Slant podcast from Jayhawkslant.com. We've got a good one lined up for you today. We're going to talk Kansas Jayhawk football and Kansas men's basketball. We've got the Slant staff all back in the studio for this one the week before Thanksgiving. We're gonna enjoy being joined by legendary broadcaster John Walters. He's the man from Iowa State and will give us the opponent scouting report on the Cyclones as we gear up for a big Big 12 matchup on the gridiron this weekend. Before we get into that, let me go ahead and welcome in our man on the men's basketball beat from the Allen Fieldhouse Suite, Mr. Shea Wildeboer. Shea, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. Getting ready. Holidays are upon us. It's getting crazy. Basketball, football. I'm wondering what's going to happen with our Chiefs.
Well, and you
got a
got
lot
baseball news, potential trade talks happening with the Royals right now. There's everything going on right now.
everything. Isn't it great that we all just get to cover one sport and don't have to do that whole where are you at, where are you going, what's going down, who's coming? I mean, it's crazy busy, but it's nice just to be able to kind of focus on one area and kind of enjoy the rest.
Exactly.
So I'm chilling,
Before,
man. I'm ready to talk some hoops.
absolutely, and I'm right there with you. But there's a ton to talk about too. Before we get into basketball, though, let me go ahead and bring in our man on the Kansas football beat and the publisher of Jayhawks Slant, my buddy John Kirby. JK, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. Just trying to get back in the groove of things after this bye week, man. I got to tell you guys, this three bye week stuff during the seasons for the birds.
It's weird.
It sucks because you try to provide content, you're trying to look for stories, right? So I mean, the good thing basketball's going because we got some of that, but I mean, when you look at things, there's really recruiting's kind of in a lull, and when you have a bye week, they aren't doing any media availability, so you're kind of digging for it. So I am welcoming these these next two games, so we have something to talk about.
No doubt. And I'll admit, middle of last week, I kind of had a little bit of a panic attack because I was like, wait a minute, something must be going on with Kirby. We forgot to do the podcast. And like I started thinking of all the possible things that could have happened. And then I looked at the schedule and I was like, I had to take a deep breath. I was like, wow, I kind of spiraled there for a minute. I was so worried about John for a minute. I almost texted you. I was like, hey man, have you heard from Kirby? And then I looked and I
I
was like, that's when I was like, good Lord, all these bye weeks. It's so bizarre. And just about the time, like you say, you start to get in a rhythm, whether it's just routine or content or building traffic and attention to what we're doing, it's time to take another week off. I'm so glad. I'm with you. I'm glad to have some stuff to talk about. And speaking of things to talk about, Shay, let's just get right into this. There was a lot of talk heading into the Jayhawks trip to Madison Square Garden to take on Duke in the Champions Classic, especially doing so without the number one player in the country potentially and the potential number one NBA draft pick next summer in Darren Peterson. But this team went in there and I can't personally as a guy, I mean, I'm not a basketball expert, but I cannot say enough about how tough this team played. You know, Kirby said it a minute ago before we came on. They're in Madison Square Garden. They're against Duke, and they just did not care that they were without their best player. These guys played tough. It was a 4-point game late in the game. Cut it to four several times, cut it to five several times.
Right.
Just couldn't get over the hump though. What was your take watching this team and how important is it for them to just to start to get minutes together and gel before Darren Peterson returns?
Yeah, Randy, I was honestly, man, I was super impressed. I
Hmm.
mean, I really was. Going into the game, I thought without Darren Peterson that Duke would kind of gain control early, and just kind of it would just kind of be a game where they just took control, and Kansas never really had an opportunity,
They
and
would
that
just do what Duke does.
right. Right. I mean, listen, you guys, and here's the thing with Darren Peterson. You see the 21 points per game, which is great, but it's not just that, it's how he gets those points and how we
Hmm.
get other teammates involved. So it's really bigger than that. So when you take that away, um, I mean that's just, I mean, that's a devastating loss to a team. I was looking over the roster before the Duke game, and when it was announced that Darren wasn't going to play, Trey White transfer in, Melvin Council transfer in,
Hmm.
Bryson Tiller was early arrival injured all last year. Hadn't played basketball in over a year. Cole Rosario, freshman. Jaden Dawson, transfer in. Marco Jackson and Jamari McDowell were both out last year. And that's what took the court. I mean, these guys haven't had a chance to really connect. Darren's been out with injuries. He's played, I think, two regular season games. And Kansas just went out there and played, man, and it was great. And here's the thing about it: if 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 Flory doesn't pick up those two fouls when they're up by six and gets removed from a game, they went from up six to down eight in, I think, a matter of like 6 minutes. Duke comes out the second half, builds the lead. Kansas cuts it to five with, I think, 3:49 left, and there was a charging call. I think Bryson Tiller got hit with a charging call. On the other end, I think Cameron Boozer had a second chance layup, and then Isaiah Evans hit the three to put him up eight. I mean, you guys, honestly, and I don't mean this in any disrespect, Kansas had no business really being in that game. I mean, it's just it's a credit to Bill Self, his staff, those guys. They just went in and played. A few years ago, and I don't know if I should say this or not, Darnell Jackson had this motto of just let him hang. And
Hmm.
that's what Kansas did against Duke. They didn't care, and it was great. And I think at some point down the line, they're going to look back on that performance when they're in a crunch situation and say, "Hey, you guys, we've been here before."
Oh yeah, I think they
So,
can build on this performance for sure.
right, and I don't want to sound cheesy but I mean that was a big time performance. I mean,
Hmm.
it really was. I mean, Trey White balled out. I think he had what 20, 23 and 8 or 22 and 10. So yeah, I mean, it was just, here's the thing with this team, and we'll get into it. The two biggest takeaways for me are going to be KU's ability to hit shots moving forward. They got
Yep.
to hit shots.
Hmm.
I mean, they just have to. And being able to rebound the basketball and prevent teams like Duke dominating the glass. The free throw discrepancy was also something that stood out. But yeah, I thought it was a great performance. I really did. Duke was a 10-point favorite. I really thought that it could get anywhere between 15 and 17, simply because of the inexperience on KU's team. I mean, no,
Hmm.
the only guy that walked out there with any experience was Flory. So yeah, I think if you're a Kansas fan, you have to be extremely excited about what you saw against Duke.
I agree. Shay, I wanted to ask you, looking down, looking ahead, looking at the games that this squad has coming up, there's not a lot of breathing room in there anywhere.
It's
There's
brutal
a pretty
stretch.
tough stretch, man. What does this team hope to accomplish in this next round of games, and how difficult can this run be?
Um, I think it would be easier for them to answer that question because I think they have a better feel of what's going on with Darren and when he's going to return. You
Hmm.
have to build on the Duke performance. You got to keep going. You got to get guys like Cole Rosario going. You guys, Melvin Council is such a good player, and we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen that part of his game yet. I think you guys got to continue to gel. You've got to continue to come together as a group. You've got to get comfortable with each other. You've got to learn each other's tendencies, figure out where guys are going to be on the court and have that feel. I mean, again, this is such an inexperienced team. I mean, obviously Trey White's an older guy, Jaden Dawson's an older guy, Melvin Council, but they've done it elsewhere. This is the first year playing at a school where eyes are always on you. So they've got to get used to that. So yeah, just getting comfortable with one another. And the difficult part about this is because they're gelling together now in some ways, and then when Darren comes back, they're going to have to learn how to kind of do it all over again. So just getting comfortable with each other on the court, learning each other's tendencies and themselves being comfortable. Because for a lot of these guys, again, this is all new. Playing at Kansas is something that none of these guys they haven't experienced it, and they're 5 games in. So I think the most important thing is just becoming comfortable with one another and kind of
Hmm.
learning each other's strengths and their tendencies on the court and what they like.
One thing that a guy that you mentioned, I just wanted to throw in a little something before we move to the next with my last question for you. Melvin Council, you mentioned him. I is a guy that focuses more on football, obviously. He is so long, but he's extremely quick. Like that was the thing. I just kept looking. I was like, he shouldn't be that quick
Right.
for as long and as lanky as he is. He flashed a few times, to use, I feel like I'm talking about a defensive end. He flashed a few times against Duke, and I'm really interested to see where he can go next.
And he's great in getting to the basket, finishing, getting to the cup,
Yep.
getting to the free throw line. Listen, the thing that this team has to do, and they've got guys. We've been saying this for 3 years now, Randy. There's guys on this team that can hit shots. They don't.
That's the key. They
That's the
just
and,
have to hit shots. You
right.
said it earlier.
Right. It's the weirdest. Like I don't recall the team ever like this is year number three that this is kind of becoming something that self addresses after every game or after every
Hmm.
press conference. They've got guys
Yeah.
that do it. They just so that's to me that's gonna and when Darren comes back that'll change. He's a guy he's proven in a short period of time that since he's been at Kansas that he can hit shots. But other guys we saw Trey White do it the other night. I think KU was 4 of 21 against Duke and he hit two of them. Guys are capable. It's weird how this game works. A slap of the wrist here or something there, and the ball goes in, or it doesn't. So yeah, it's but Randy, I am excited, simply because I think when Peterson returns, that the ceiling might be a little bit higher than some thought.
I agree with you completely. Now, you talk about shooting, and part of obviously finding shooting, recruiting is a huge piece of that. And right now, KU has the number 3 ranked recruiting class. But I know you've been dropping a few nuggets on the message boards about things that may be happening. Get us caught up with the latest in recruiting and what you're following right now.
Yeah, obviously Tyron Stokes, the number one ranked player in the class, visited Kansas back in I want to say April. Kentucky, Louisville, Oregon. Recently narrowed his list of schools to three, being Kansas, Oregon, and Kentucky. Everybody knows that he signed a deal with Nike. And the thing about this is, and obviously everybody heard he left Notre Dame High School. He's now at Rainier Beach in Seattle, Washington. Mike Bethea, a lot of guys connected to Curtis Townsend came through Rainier Beach. You know,
Hmm.
I, and here's the thing, Rain, you never know because there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about. KU stayed with him from the very beginning, regardless of what everybody else said. He signed with Nike. That didn't stop Curtis Townsend and himself and those guys from staying committed to him as a recruit. From everything I've been told, Kansas is very much in the running for Tyron Stokes. I originally thought that it would be Kentucky, and it still may very well be. The Nike brand is a strong brand, and they've got a lot to offer. But I
Hmm.
think, moving forward, where things stand now, um, I think Kansas is right there with Kentucky. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how it's all going to go down. But I think for all the people out there that thought Kansas was maybe just an afterthought, that he just kept him on his list because of his relationship with Coach Townsend, that is not the case. Kansas is a legitimate player here. And it's something you want to watch. Just keep an eye on. And again, the signing period is come and gone. So he can verbally commit, obviously, to any school he wants to. Can't sign. So that's over. That period is over. But yeah, I think Kansas is right there. And if he and I don't know what's going to happen. If he ends up committing to Kansas, it wouldn't surprise me. If he ends up committing to Kentucky, it wouldn't surprise me. But I do know, despite the Nike endorsement, Kansas is very much in play.
That's our man Shea Wildebour on the men's basketball beat. Shea, thanks for all the insight and the updates. We'll talk to you again
All
soon,
right, guys,
man.
have a good one.
That's Shea Wildebour from the Allen Fieldhouse Suite. Now we're going to switch gears and bring in my man John Kirby and talk some Kansas Jayhawks football. Kirby, the Hawks are coming off a bye week, another bye week. It seems like every time we turn around, we have a bye week, John.
It's a bye week season.
Oh my gosh, it's been so annoying. You've been around this team. What's the sense that you've kind of gotten from them as they come off yet another weekend off as they gear up to wrap up the season with these last 2 games?
Yeah, Randy, they spent some of that bye week, a couple things, looking ahead, getting some extra time to prepare for Iowa State, which Iowa State is coming off a bye as well. So they've got the same thing as they go to KU, but there was also some reflecting time I
Mhm.
think Zabrowski and DK McDonald talked about going back, okay, and looking at some things. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What are some things that, you can change? I know Zabrowski said when we were talking to him that he really did a lot of self-reflecting, going back and seeing plays and said, God, should I have called something different here? Did I put the team in a bad spot here? He took a little of the blame, which, as a coach, you when you cover a team, you never have a problem hearing a coach take some blame.
Exactly.
I always joke, you don't want to hear the coach taking blame every week, right? Because
True.
then that means things aren't really good at all. So, Lance Leipold met with their leadership council of the team, and they kind of talked about a plan and what to do. And it was interesting. They did something different. They gave the kids the weekend off. So some of them actually went back home, got some time away from the program. They came back and then they practiced on Monday. Usually Monday's an off day, but they put an extra day of practice in because they gave them a time off. So maybe that gives kids a chance to get away, clear the mind a little bit. They practiced the previous week. But like we talked about, 3 bye weeks, I'm not a fan of it. I know the players all said, hey, it does help the body and things like that, but it gave them a chance to get healthy. The injury report came out last night. It wasn't too bad. Daniel Highshaw's on there. I'd rather not see Daniel Highshaw on there in a game
Yeah.
where, they're going to need him. So, that was a little bit of concern, but these kids know they're getting ready for the final 2 games, and they need one more to get bowl eligible, and that's something they talk about all the time. So we'll kind of see where that bye week takes them on Saturday.
The squad heads on the road to face Iowa State in Ames on Saturday. And to get a look from the opponent's sidelines, we're joined now by John Walters, the voice of the Cyclones. He joins John on the studio line right now.
We are joined by the voice of the Iowa State Cyclones, John Walters. He's done it for a long time, does a great job. He's going to give us a closer look at this weekend's game from the Iowa State side. John, how's it going today? Thank you very much for joining us.
I'm happy to do it. Things are going great. I appreciate you having me on.
I wanted to start with the injuries. I know Iowa State. I mean, I followed their program, and man, they mounted up. And just take us through the injuries. Take us through the injuries and how's that affected the team.
It's really been hard for everybody involved. The most recent is Gabe Burkle. He's out for the season. Just had surgery this week, and really good tight end who had emerged as one of the better tight ends, I think, in the Big 12, and now he's gone. The defensive backfield just has been decimated by injuries throughout the season. You had, Iowa State had 3 preseason All Big 12 players. 2 of them were defensive backs, and both of them went out for the season, game 4, game 5, Jeremiah Cooper and Jontez Williams. So don't have either one of those guys. Tayshawn James, a safety who was a starter. Jamison Patton, a safety who was a starter. All those guys are out. And so, you have other guys stepping in and doing the best they can, and really did a great job at TCU in the win there. But it's hard. I mean, you're putting guys out there maybe a little bit earlier than they're truly ready for, but you don't have a choice. And so young guys are kind of growing up on the job, and I think they're growing up very quickly, and that's a great thing for Iowa State's future, but you feel bad for the guys that are hurt. And as a whole for the team, they had started out 5-0, and then the injuries really hit, and they lost 4 games in a row, found a way to dig down deep and win at TCU in their last game, and still plenty to play for. But the hopes of a magical season kind of went out the window with all those injuries. And, the thing is, a year ago at this time, Iowa State was decimated by injuries too. And those were in the linebacking core. The problem's been they've all hit in one spot, and last year it was the linebacking core. This year it's the defensive backfield. So it's been tough, but this group of guys also has a chance to win the most games in Iowa State football history over a 2-year period, despite all that. And so that's pretty encouraging given the circumstances.
I wanted to ask you because I watched that TCU game, and I mean, boy, somehow they got out of there with a win. It didn't look like the offense was really moving the ball a lot, but those kids they play hard, and they just seemed like they were fighting through it. How's Matt Campbell been able to keep that going and navigate through everything?
Yeah, I think he's always talked about kind of being the same guy every day, whether you win or you lose, working to become the best version of yourself every single day, and straining to do that. And I think those coaches are that way too. You don't walk in and see them blowing a lid just because you've lost a couple games in a row. They're going to be in the same frame of mind that they always are about going about their business. And I think that's a really positive thing when you do go through the highs and lows of a football season, because there's going to be that. There's going to be highs and lows. There's going to be adversity. And I think these guys are really grounded in the way they approach things. And so that's helped tremendously. Specifically talking about that TCU game, you're right. I think they kind of needed a shot in the arms to come from somewhere else besides their offense. And whether it was a defensive touchdown, which they haven't had one of this season, or a special teams touchdown, which they hadn't had one of this season. And sure enough, Aiden Flora walk-on returns a punt 79 yards for what proves to be the game-winning touchdown.
Yeah.
And that was the shot in the arm maybe that everybody needed. But really in the fourth quarter of that game, when you had to make big plays in the moment, and that's what we always talk about, is can you make those plays in the moment? Because you're going to be in a lot of close games. So can you make those plays that decide the game when it matters the most? And Iowa State probably made 8 or 9 plays in the fourth quarter of that game that if they don't make one of them, they lose that game. But Rocco Beck's fake on a fourth down conversion, the great plays by Drew Surgis, the back end, to break up a couple of passes, one that went as a fumble recovery, one that went as just an incomplete pass on a third down conversions, and big moments. Iowa State had to make all those plays in order to have success and win that game. And they did in the moment. That's what's really encouraging, because they had been struggling to make those plays in the moment, and they were able to do it in the fourth quarter at TCU. So I think that gives everybody a real boost of confidence going into these last few games.
I wanted to start with the offense. Obviously, Rocco Beck makes everything go, but just talk about the offense. What are their strengths, and maybe a couple players to watch there?
Yeah, Rocco is the guy. You're right. You're exactly right. And he's the guy that makes everything go. Now, he's struggled lately. He's been a little bit dinged up, and he's not been as accurate as he was early in the season. It's hard in football because you can play hurt, and a lot of guys do. And and if you're a track and field athlete and you're at 70%, you're finishing last every time. But in football, a lot of guys will play through injuries and through pain. And I'm sure it's been the same way with Jalen Daniels as it is with Rocco Beck through the years, where there's games where you don't feel 100%. So he's tried to fight through that the best he can. We mentioned he lost one of his top receivers in Gabe Burkle. But this offense has really found its identity with the running game too. And that's something that in the last few games, they've really run the football well. They have one of the more experienced veteran offensive lines. I think the best offensive line they've had in several years at Iowa State. 3 seniors up there that are really leading the way. And they've been able to open some holes from that run game. You've got 2 really good running backs in Carson Hansen and Abu Sama. So Iowa State's been able to pretty consistently run the football. And I think that's offensively giving you a chance where you can have that balance between the passing and the running game. I think that'll be critical against Kansas on Saturday for Iowa State to be able to establish the run and, not be held under, say, 120 yards, to have at least somewhere above 120, maybe, between 120 and 200 yards rushing would be a good barometer for Iowa State to have success in this game. And I don't think the weather's going to be a huge factor, but you always want to be able to run the football, and that'll certainly be the case on Saturday.
Well, the Jayhawks run defense is going to have to step up, because they haven't been super great here lately. For people who follow the Big 12, everybody's aware of Heacock as the defensive coordinator and what he's done with that 3-3-5 when he kind of installed it. Just talk about the defense. How have they been playing? And again, a couple players maybe to watch there.
Well, the first player to watch is Dominic Orange, senior on the defensive line, who's from Kansas City.
Absolutely.
He did not play in the game against Kansas a year ago at Arrowhead Stadium. He didn't make that trip. And he's such a difference maker. Now, he's not going to fill up the stat sheet at all. I mean, he doesn't have any sacks this season. He's got, I think, 1 tackle for loss. He's not a guy who you're just going to look at and say, wow, those stats just blow you away. But when you watch him play and you watch the way he affects the line of scrimmage and changes the line of scrimmage, he's a dynamic player who's probably going to go either late in the first round or early in the second round of the NFL draft. Behind him, Cooper Ebel and Marcus Neal. Marcus Neal's another Kansas City guy at safety. And these are the 3 guys that are kind of right up the middle of Iowa State's defense. Dominic Orange right over the nose, Cooper Ebel at Mike linebacker, and Marcus Neal at middle safety. That's the strength of Iowa State's defense, is those 3 guys. And they really flew around and tackled well against TCU. I think that'll be critical against Kansas, which loves to spread you out and use the whole field horizontally and vertically. They really try to spread you out. Football, in my opinion, like a lot of sports, the offense is trying to create space. The defense is trying to not allow space. And Kansas is as good through the years at creating space as any offense you'll see. And then when they do it with guys like Emmanuel Henderson and Daniel Highshaw and Cam Pickett, it's a really dangerous situation, especially with Daniels, who can beat you with the run or the pass. So Iowa State's going to have to be really sharp defensively. They're going to have to be a very good tackling team on Saturday in order to win this game.
Yeah, everybody, all the Kansas fans definitely know Dom Orange. I mean, I think it was KU was in that final 2 or 3 when he chose Iowa State, and I know he's played real well. Hey, listen, this is a big game for KU. I mean, they've got to get bowl eligible. They're 1 win away, and they're at Ames, and then they finish at home against Utah. So not a lot of easy matchups, but they've been able to beat Iowa State 3 straight times, which is I don't know that I've ever seen that happen. But how do you see this matchup?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a certain sense from the Iowa State side that, hey, we kind of owe them one. They've beaten us 3 in a row, but that's a direct result of Lance Leipold and what he's done with that program and making them competitive, where even with that Utah game, you're going to feel like you have a chance if you play well. And I mean, that's such a big hurdle to get over for both Iowa State and Kansas. When you think about the down years in their programs, where you really didn't feel like you had a chance in certain games if you were playing one of the best teams in the conference, from a fan perspective or from a player perspective, whatever the case may be. But when you have great coaches like Lance Leipold and Matt Campbell, you clear that first hurdle to at least feel like you have a chance. If you play well, you're going to have an opportunity. And so I don't think anybody takes anything for granted in this matchup. I think it's one that has been very, very competitive in recent years. And I expect another close game, another down to the wire game. And in this conference, as we talked about at the beginning of this interview, how you do in close games is going to dictate what kind of a season you have. You're probably going to play 6 or 7 games over the course of a season that are decided by a touchdown or less. And are you going to go in 5-1 in those games, or are you going to go 1-5? That's what's going to dictate what kind of a season you have. And I think that's true for both Iowa State and Kansas. And I think it'll be a hard-fought, hard-hitting game. November football typically is. It's a very emotional day for Iowa State because of senior day and a class that's meant a lot to this place. And it's a long-time great rival. And so I expect a really intense, hard-hitting football game, a great football game that'll come right down to the finish. I'd be surprised if it isn't decided on the last couple possessions.
That is John Walters. He's the voice of Iowa State, does a great job on their broadcast. Hey, John, thank you very much for joining us on this show.
My pleasure, John. Thanks for having me.
That was John Walters, and he always does such a great job. He's an absolute legend. He talked about some of the injuries that the Cyclones have had to go through this year. Matt Campbell's squad, they've been through it. You heard what he had to say about that, and now let's get into our predictions. Look closer at this game. Kirby, how do you think this thing is going to play out on Saturday?
Randy, I'm going to tell you this. For the first time that I've ever done this, I write a lot of when the opposing team, will always reach out to me to write an article talking about KU and my thoughts and the prediction. And for the first time that I can ever really remember, I wrote this yesterday. And I think Bill at the Iowa State site ran his story this morning, Thursday morning. And I actually put in there, I'm just not ready to make a prediction. I don't feel good about the game either way. I have no feel whatsoever for this game. It's always funny. I got a few buddies that always reach out. Hey man, do you like the Jayhawks +4? Hey, do you like KU minus? So, but here, and I'm telling these guys, why in the world would you bet on this game? Okay,
Exactly.
I mean, you've got
God,
a team.
yes.
You've got a team like KU, who listen. You go back over it. And in my opinion, there's only been really one game that they've laid an egg, and that's Kansas State. Okay. I mean, going to Lubbock, that's a hard place to play. Okay. And they were in the game at half, but they had Arizona beat. They had Cincinnati beat. I mean, KU is not that bad of a football team, okay?
No.
But then you got Iowa State on senior day, and a lot of emotions. They're coming back home now, and I'm just kind of like, why would you bet? Iowa State's banged up with injuries. Why in the world would possess you to bet on this football game? I mean, there's so many variables, but
Too much uncertainty everywhere. Oh my
well, I'm
gosh.
just like, go find another game. But
Yes.
listen, I think, Randy, I really do think KU matches up well. Okay. They're going
Hmm.
to have to throw the football. I would say Iowa State is pretty good up front. They got a solid group of linebackers. So, they're going to play the run, but this isn't the Iowa State defense that we've seen in the past that ranks second or third in the conference. I want to say they're like ninth maybe overall in total defense. Their secondary, as John said, is really banged up and they're inexperienced. They're kind of learning on the job training right now as they keep getting more snaps. So I think there's plays to be made in the passing game. The Jayhawks have just got to figure out a way to execute it and get those plays open. Listen, Jalen Daniels has had a good year.
Yes, he has.
Take out the Kansas State game, like I said. That's kind of like the turd in the punch bowl right now, right? I mean, you keep going over the season and you keep going back to that damn Kansas State game, and it keeps throwing your thinking process off. So, offensively, I don't have a real positive feel for Iowa State. I think their offensive line's good. I do think their running backs run hard and they can grind out yards. God, I watched them play TCU, and boy, I don't know how they won that game. I mean, Beck wasn't very good. I mean, Iowa State didn't even have 300 yards of offense, and they found a way to win on the road. Beck was like 9 of 24 for 111 yards. And so, the concern for me there is Iowa State running the ball. Kansas, what defense is 13th, 14th against the run in the conference, and that's a concern. Randy, we always talk about KU on the message board. People talk about the cover or the cushion that the defensive backs give and always giving up a lot of space. Well, this might be the game that you want to really bring everybody in and just line up to try to stop Iowa State's running game, because I mean, I think that's definitely what they're going to come in with. Rocco Beck not really being 100% healthy and him
Hmm.
struggling through the air. So, I don't know. I over the last 3 years, KU's had their number, and when I asked Lance Leipold about it, he really didn't have a reason why they've had their number. I think sometimes a little bit it's the way that Kansas can spread Iowa State out, and Iowa State's a well coached, hard nosed team, but they always don't have one of those teams that just stands out like they're fast and athletic. And I think Kansas has exposed some of that. So I've really struggled with this game more than any other game. I've tried to figure KU out going into a game. Boy, I'll tell you, I look at this. KU's got 2 games left, okay, and I'm
Yeah.
just telling you, I don't like the Utah matchup, and I'll
Oh
tell you
no.
why. I'll tell
That
you
could
why.
get ugly.
Well, Utah, and I haven't watched them a lot, but I watched them the other day, and they have more ways to run the football. They've got this freshman kid they bring in who's a quarterback who's electric. Their quarterback, that Dampier, can run the ball. They've got good running backs. They've got a physical O line, and I mean they do a lot of different things in space with jet sweeps and motions and the wildcat. I mean they run the ball, Randy. They find more formations to run the ball than a lot of teams I've seen recently, and that scares me to death because KU has not been able to stop the run. So, listen, this comes down to this. I don't like the matchup against Utah. Okay. And dang it, I'd like to pick the friggin' Jayhawks to win a game. All right. I mean, they need that 6th win. And I really went into this thinking, okay, do I just go, Randy, I'm going to flip a coin in the air. And whoever I flip the coin to is who I'm going with to win. And that's what I was seriously going to do. And I'm like, nah, don't do that. Right. I mean, that's something my kids would do. So, I'm gonna go with the homer pick, okay? And I say this for everybody listening who's trying to listen to figure out, do you pick the game and gamble on it? Do not take my opinion, do not take my analysis on this game, because I am not even close to sure what will happen in this game. But I think if there's ever a time I'm going to pick KU, I guess this is the week because I don't think I'm going to pick them next week against Utah. So I'm going to go with a mild upset that comes down to the wire. KU 28, Iowa State 27 with a confidence level of 5. So yeah. Give me yours, man.
You know, oof, you basically said everything that I have been feeling about this game in regards to I just don't feel strongly. And I've, much like you, I just resigned myself saying, okay, I don't know who to pick. I know who I want to win. I'm gonna go with that. I feel like, and I know I've said this throughout the season, and you mentioned too, Jalen Daniels has had a good year. Jalen Daniels has played well. There, that K-State game aside, he has performed very well this season for the Jayhawks. I I see this being, a little close, not as close as you've got it. I'm saying 31-24 KU goes on the road, wins this one at Iowa
Wow.
State, gets bowl eligible. I think KU's going to be able to throw the ball. I think the weather could play a factor here because we all know about the wind in Iowa.
Well, so
Hopefully,
let me jump in on that. Okay. Right. As I was starting to write our previews as we do our staff predictions, I actually did some research on the weather this morning.
okay, because I haven't
52,
looked.
52 at kick with 6 mile an hour winds. So, hey, you
Hmm.
can't blame me and say I haven't done my research.
That's timely information, Mr. Kirby. I appreciate that. That if that's pretty good. I mean, that might be as close to ideal as you're going to get this time of year up in Ames. I feel like if you get that kind of weather, I think you can do just about whatever you want. And
Well, I
I
mean, the
think
what I think helps that, honestly, is I think that helps KU pass game because
exactly. Oh,
I
that's what
do
I mean.
think against that secondary from Iowa State, I do think there are going to be receivers that have a chance to make some plays against Iowa State.
And you talk about that secondary. That's a team that we talked about it the last couple of years. They've had one of the best back tandems in the country. They had tremendous corners up there. Both of those guys are playing in the league now too. This is an inexperienced Iowa State secondary for the first time in a few years. They are susceptible to the passing game. They've shown it all year. I think if the weather is like that, I think KU's got a tremendous opportunity. And now I feel a little bit better about my win by 7 pick on the road. I think Jalen could have a really good day up there, but it can't just be him throwing the ball. He's got to be effective running and throwing. I think they've got an opportunity though. Yeah, this may just be more of a squint my eyes closed, cross my fingers, and hope for the best kind of situation. I say 31-24 KU. Let's hope that's exactly what we see. Um, Now, we always talk a little bit of recruiting, John, and I know things have been kind of slow on the recruiting front. Coming out of the bye week, anything that you've been following, any news to share?
Yeah, actually, just before we went into recording on the podcast, I just put up a story. Very interesting prospect. I had a chance to talk to him. Great kid, Kanye Thompson. He's from Slippery Rock University. Okay,
Okay.
he has set an official visit with KU. He will arrive on Monday. He went in the portal like 48 hours ago. And I mean, the first day he went in, it was Kansas, South Florida, Memphis, Pitt, Syracuse. I mean, I think he picked up 10 offers in the very first day
Oh,
of
wow.
going in the portal. Now, this kid can fly. Okay. He's a 100-meter kid, 4x1. He's also going to meet with the KU track coaches. And I can promise you, the KU track coaches will give this kid any time of day they need because he has run a 10-2-1 and a 10-1-5 100. So I mean
Oh,
that is absolutely blazing. Okay.
that's
So
moving.
yeah, so he told me he's never really been coached in track. He's never had someone teach him and show him. He said, I think I can get sub 10. Okay. I mean, if you get sub 10, you're talking NCAA track meet right
I was
there.
going to say
So
that's fringe. You're getting up there. I mean, that's like, okay, are you somebody that could be in that potentially the Olympic developmental time
Yeah,
pipeline,
so
you know?
keep an eye on this, and he kind of told me he's talked with Syracuse and Memphis maybe about a visit, but boy, that visit with KU's locked in, and he was kind of non-committal on where he would go next. So another interesting thing with him, the defensive coordinator at Slippery Rock was a GA for Jim Panagos, KU's defensive tackles coach. So there's a little bit of a tie in there. He told me Brandon Shelby and Rob Ianello have been recruiting him pretty hard. So that's one to watch. And, Randy, this is kind of the calm before the storm. KU's pretty much done with any high school recruiting. I mean, they found a spot to take KD Jones because that was a running back they really wanted. And when he decommitted from Oklahoma State, they went right after that one. But I think we're about ready to get into December. Okay. And I am here to tell you December is going to be absolutely crazy. And here's why. Although players can't officially enter the portal until January this year, what you're going to see is a lot of news and players coming out saying, I intend to enter the portal. So they may not be able to put their names in, but they're going to come out with their intentions. And
they announce their intentions. That's exactly what I was going to say.
That gives their representation or agents chances to start talking with other schools and getting in line of, what kind of money they may be worth or what positions are out there. So there's going to be a lot of jockeying in December. And the Jayhawks have picked up a few PWO guys here in the last week or so. And I don't think you're going to see a lot of PWOs in the offseason just because of the new roster limits where everybody's got smaller spots to give. So that's kind of what's been going on. But man, we are getting close to getting in the crazy times.
I know you and I, as crazy as it is, that's kind of the fun time of year for us. So I'm looking forward to that. That will do it for another pregame edition of the Inside Slant podcast from Jayhawkslant.com. Before we go, we want to wish the Jayhawks women's soccer team luck in the NCAA tournament, as well as KU's Emma Jamutai, the first KU cross-country runner since 2023 to compete in the NCAA championships. Be sure and check us out again next week as we recap, fingers crossed, like I said, eyes closed, hoping for the best, big wins over Iowa State in football, and for the Jayhawks men's basketball team in the Players Era tournament in Las Vegas. For my man Shea Wildeboer, my man John Kirby, I'm Randy Withers. You've been listening to the Inside Slant podcast from Jayhawkslant.com. We'll talk with you again soon.
This has been a podcast from Jayhawkslant.com.